So as outlined in Programming Lua by the chief architect, Roberto, Lua actually keeps all of its global variables in a regular table called the environment. And the environment table, also known as Lua's global table, is defined by a single name, which is _G. And we can actually print out and see what is in the global table by default. And we'll just write a little bit of code here so we can actually see what are the default variable names in the Lua global table if we don't declare any of our own. So let's start off. We'll write a comment here. So we'll first off define an indexing variable. So we're actually going to just use that to figure out how many entries are in the Lua global table. And don't worry about this at the moment, but just a little bit of, we'll get into pairs and iPairs a bit later on in a different lesson. So that for loop basically just counts through the first level of the Lua global table, and once it's finished, we're just going to print out this string of text. So I'll just go ahead and save that, and up here in the Corona Editor tab, just make sure you've got the Show Build panel activated, and we'll just go and run that project and just expand out the console, and you can see here all these names printed out here are actually global variable names by default within the Lua and Corona environment. Now there's one exception, of course, which is our own variable called myvar2, which we declared on line 11. So by default in Lua and Corona there are actually 58 entries automatically, and then we've declared myvar2, which becomes the 59th entry shown down here. And you'll notice there that myvar2 is added in that list. However, there's no sign of myvar1 being included in that global table list, because of course we prefixed it with the local keyword on line 9. Now, if you're going to use global variables, it's good practice to do 3 things: to explicitly allocate it to the global table by using the _G dot variable name type of notation. You should really only define global variables near the top of the main.lua file, or alternatively, you could create a separate module or file called, for instance, myglobals.lua, and simply require that file or module into the top of main.lua. And don't get hung up too much on what a module is at this point, but we will cover that in a separate lesson a bit later on. So let's use the explicit sort of declaration to assign a global variable. So on line 12 we'll type _G dot myvar3, and we'll give it a string, which is and let's go ahead and save that, and we'll just rerun the project. And as you can see now, we've got 60 entries in the Lua Global table. Now, just before we end this lesson, you can actually easily retrieve the assigned value from the global table. Of course, simply just by knowing the declaration variable name, or you could do something like this. And what we're doing on lines 24 and 25 is, first, since the Lua Global table is simply a regular Lua table, all the entries are key value pairs. So we're giving the Lua Global table a key name of myvar3, which should return back the value to our local declaration called whatText. And then on line 25, we go ahead and print that out. So just save that and rerun the project. And down here you can see we've retrieved the value within the global variable myvar3, which in this case is the string of text that says here is a string. Anyways, yeah, just the takeaways on that are, you should always be using local variables the majority of the time, and when you need them, global variables come in handy, but definitely use them sparingly. Okay, in the next lesson, we're going to get into actually utilizing the Corona simulator by starting to get some images and graphics on the screen. So I hope to see you in that next lesson. Thanks.